Hey, welcome back, YouTube community, wherever you're watching. I'm back with what is last week's books that I picked up. Uh, like the last time, was pretty much a slow week for me. I only picked up three books. I know I spent quite a long time last time talking about, Superman, Wonder Woman, but being, what it was, very controversial book, you know, and I needed to share most of my thoughts on it. But I promise that this time it will be very, very brief. So let's start with Supergirl number 24. This ends the current run of writer Michael Allen Nelson. This also ends the arc that had been running for a while involving the Cyborg Superman. The cover by Mahmoud Azhar, as always, very, very awesome looking cover. So, last issue, we pretty much Supergirl dies. She's disintegrated and becomes part of the Ignoxian uh, collective mind. And we discovered that Cyborg was actually, Zor-El. And of course, you read the Cyborg Superman story from Villain's Manual. You know how he got there that way. Anyway, I really enjoy this issue. I mean, Supergirl here, she's definitely a very powerful character. I mean, she's got a very strong will, and after what she's been through, that anger just sort of made her, much much more, um, you know, you know, showing this awesome power. I mean, just looking at this, this alone, shows her anger, that strength, of will. She wasn't, go down, you know, without a fight. Of course, she's sort of, asking for revenge and, some very nasty stuff. But I mean, after all you've been through, I think I'd be pretty pissed off. And, the fact that she's got all these awesome powers, sort of could make her very, very scary. Very, very scary. Um, but, in the end, within all this anger and, this very dark uh, thing going on, we do find a much more sympathetic Sorel because we've seen especially in villains now we've got a lot of Sorel. We've seen a very, and even in past issues, a very desperate Sorel, a very jealous Sorel who is very jealous of Jor-El. Um, so here he's willing to sacrifice himself to turn back into the cyborg Superman and save his daughter and give her a second chance, to live a happy life. And so I really like that. And pretty much, in the end, she does get a second chance. She pretty much died, came back, and of course that ended the kryptonite poisoning story that had been going on since the end of Hell on Earth. So definitely a new, fresh start. It closes you know, a part of the story. Pretty much setting up the next stage, which will start in December. Because before that, we got the return to Krypton, and the last page actually does the setup for that story, where we see the Oracle that showed up, during Hell on Earth, got this oracle. So that sets up the stage for next month Super Family crossover with Superman and Superboy, and it really kicks off in 2 weeks with, or next week with the Action Comics Annual #2. So again, Supergirl #24. Next up, Wonder Woman #24. As always, I love this book, and having been rereading a lot of Chris Claremont X-Men, been rereading a lot of that, through trades. Wonder Woman and what Azrael is doing, it reminds me a bit of that, of this very sort of long-term narrative, but at the same time it hits certain points where maybe where you probably have like arcs, but they don't feel like arcs because they're very well integrated into the larger narrative. So there are certain stop points, you could say, where a certain story ends and sets the stage for the next. So with Wonder Woman #24, the next stage starts. In issue 23, Wonder Woman kills War. Thus, Wonder Woman becomes the new goddess of war. If you read the Firstborn one shot from Villains Month, the story continues from there. In fact, stuff that happened in that one shot are mentioned in this book, in this story. And so definitely a new arc is starting. The first battle with the Firstborn, that was just an arc. It sets the stage for the next part of this epic story. So I'm really loving it, because it certainly is engaging. You just want to see what happens next. Not much happened in this book action wise. It's all set up for upcoming issues. It had some really good moments. One of the, I guess, funniest, is with Hera, placing the head of Lennox, who died in issue #23, and she kind of places him, here's his head, here's his head, and she sort of her sort of places him in, in the fireplace, and sorry, you can in the fireplace, so that's kind of funny, bit disturbing, but Zola, with Zola and Wonder Woman, really shocked at what she did. But again, being family, sort of, her says Paul, he deserves to be in a place of honor, and that's probably what pretty much sums up her godliness. So definitely good book. And while Cliff Chang only did this cover which is an homage to Frank Frazetta, the art by the interior by Goran Zuzka, and who has become part of, I guess, the assistants to Cliff Chang. I would say, but Cliff Chang doesn't always do the art of the book. So, because I guess he can't, do that many issues, or he's working on some other issues. So to keep the monthly book going, because he needs some filling artists. But they're really much more than instead of being one artist and one writer, it's like one writer and several artists whose style I find to be very similar, very not exactly copies of each other. They do have their differences, but colorist Matthew Wilson, he's the one that's been putting the book, giving it a consistent look despite the fact that some other artists might be coming into the book, to help out and keep, the momentum of the book. So, definitely, he just doesn't, Matthew Wilson doesn't just give the book color, it gives it, the whole, sets up the whole tone and of the book as well. So I love that as well. Okay, finally, uh, Batman Superman #4, the end of the first arc. So this book has been a bit of a controversy. Some people liked it, some people haven't really liked it, and they're dropping it. Uh, I'd say that despite that the first arc might be a bit confusing, especially because of the art. I mean, it's Jay Lee's art isn't that. I guess it's very different, and the coloring doesn't really help because it goes more to a much more, I guess, impressionistic type of style. It's more of it's not necessarily very clear. I mean, you got all these bright colors, but it's so uh, at times it right now it's like very bright art, but I do at times did get a bit confused between both characters, both Superman and both Batman at times. But it's very different art. Maybe it's not, and I know jail has been around for a while, so this style, this particular coloring, might not be doing it any service. I don't know. I like the story, I like the story. Um, but I wouldn't judge. I wouldn't say you should drop the book just based on these first four issues, because next month, um, the artist will be Brett Booth, if I'm not mistaken, and they're gonna actually publish the book this way. I don't know. It's becoming. I think this is becoming a little more experimental at times with art, with art and storytelling. The art here is very different than what you'd expect in a book. Uh, I like the story. The story finally sort of explains why the main Earth Justice League was able to defeat Darkseid, and why the Earth 2 characters actually ended up sacrificing themselves. The fact that both Batman and Superman are still young and very raw, you know, so they're willing to do things that maybe a much more experienced, Superman and Batman of Earth 2 would not do. They kind of more of a cerebral type of thing, I guess, more based on strategy and less based on God and of just doing stuff. So I didn't like that whole comparison between, youth, the experience of youth, the inexperience of youth, and the experience of maturity, I would say. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the next issue. So I don't think people should, based on this, shouldn't, drop, the book. I don't know. Maybe it was a connection between, the storytelling. Maybe the art didn't help out. I liked the art in the book, but at times it did feel a bit, kind of confusing. I don't know. Many reasons. Okay, so those were my books for the last week. And before I go, I definitely like to recommend that people should pick up, either as a trade or independent individual issues, Action Comics 855, 856, and 857. The story is called Escape from Bizarro World, and it came out in 2007. The story is by a guy named J.F. Johns, and the art's by someone called Eric Powell. The guy who created the Goon did this 3-issue arc, and so it features Bizarro, some very unique art, by Mr. Powell. Here is the Bizarro Justice League. So it's a bit of a fun story with Bizarro, a bit disturbing at times. We get the origin of Bizarro World, pre-New 52, post-Infinite Crisis. I won't give much away. Just basically, Superman goes to Bizarro World to rescue his father, who had been kidnapped by Bizarro, who, and puts him in his own fortress of solitude, behind like a crystal, sort of like emulating the Jor-El simulacrum that Superman had in his fortress. And they end up helping Bizarro be accepted within his own crazy Bizarro world. It's a fun ride. 3 issues, so you can either pick it up as a trade, or again, I repeat, issues: Action Comics 855, Action Comics 856, and Action Comics 857. It's really worth your time to pick this up and get a very good fun Superman story. So that's it for now. I'll see you later this week with this week's pull list. So until next time, keep smiling.